if you're new in the industry, I get it. You're just trying to learn. You're trying to do this. But if you've been in this industry more than a dozen years and you think that you're doing the best thing for your client by shopping the same 4 or 5 players over and over, and you know they're overcharging by at least a factor of 2, check your soul. Because if you don't care about that, and if you just want to buy a nicer car, you're going to keep doing it. And there's nothing I can say to you that's going to fix that. But if you care, you will go this route. You will at least show your clients how to do this.
Welcome back. We're having a little broker panel conversation with Craig and Mike. If you didn't see the first segment of this, don't watch this. You have to go back and watch the first segment of our conversation with these two. There's lots of conversation you don't want to miss in there. So now we're going to go ahead and pivot, and we're going to start talking a little bit more about the practical experience that you've had with reference-based pricing. It doesn't have to be exclusively with ClaimTalk, but I want to hear about the first case that you ever put with reference-based pricing and how it panned out. You know, like
These guys
how does
don't have any RBP cases.
Oh, they don't?
They're just talking about it.
Why are they
They don't
here?
actually do it.
They just grabbed us at the airport, actually, and said, hey.
Oh, they're one of those brokers.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
just always talk about it.
They're
and
like
then they
me.
never
I sell
actually-
for ClaimTalk, but I'm on a Blue Cross plan.
Yeah, right? We were talking about that on the way over here this morning. Yeah.
I am not on a Blue Cross plan.
Just to be clear.
Purple Shield.
Yeah, Purple Shield. So the first case that I ever wrote RBP, what happened is it was a technology company. It was a startup, about 150 lives, and they hired one of those like CFO, like for hire, like an older, more experienced gun.
Fractional CFO.
Okay, is that what that is? Yeah.
Yeah.
This guy comes in and looks at the plan and scares the ever-loving you-know-what out of everyone because he says there's no stop loss, which there was. But what what happened is he didn't understand what we were doing. And so he came in and with a very broad brush just painted this as a horrible idea. I was immediately fired when that guy was hired. So I don't really know how it panned out. But in that situation, it was ignorance on behalf of the decision maker that created the end of that path for that client with RBP. So I just wanted to hear from you, some practical stories, some practical experiences. Because again, part of the podcast is to help educate some brokers that haven't done it yet. So I want to give the audience a little
She really wants war stories. That's what she
realistic.
wants.
Oh, we don't need more horror stories,
got a
Mike.
good
We got
war
those.
story.
I said war stories.
War stories. Okay.
You wanna go first?
I won't tell on one of my. So my first client is still doing it, saving a ton of money, had no problems at all, and they're in a tough area. Mm-hmm. They're in an area where there's a health system in Northern California that rhymes with butter health, and they are known to be difficult for reference-based pricing, and we have no. I shouldn't knock on wood. We have very little trouble there. So, I mean, that client, the first year they did it, they saved 43% year over year.
Wow.
And they just keep going, and their costs have remained basically flat. They're going up like a point here and there.
Yeah.
But I will tell you a horror story about when it goes wrong. So I got a phone call, and it was from a repricer, other than ClaimTalk, and a TPA. And they called me and said, Craig, we wouldn't normally do this, but we need you to come in and save this plan. They've been RBP for 6 years. The broker was in over their head. The TPA was in over their head, the former, and they're being sued for $4.5 million. Unpaid claims dating back years.
Oh, wow.
Difficult geography. And they said, they've now selected us as a new repricer and a new TPA, but we see that the problem still is with the broker, and this is not getting fixed. It's really, really bad. They need a lawyer. They need help. They need you. So that was December 6th on a 1-1 case. We came in. We took it over. We did the open enrollment, and immediately I got involved with the claims, assisted in helping bring in outside counsel. Long story short, we were able to settle that $4.5 million suit for $230,000, of which the TPA ended up paying part of it because the TPA was at fault. And the client was ecstatic because that was 6 years of savings that they ultimately got to keep. Now, what was the issue? The issue was there were balance bills that were coming up very late, like a year later, 18 months later. And the broker panicked and told the TPA, I'll take care of it. Don't tell the client. I'll take care of it. Don't tell the client.
Don't tell the client.
Wow.
Oh, my
Yeah, that's why I'm not using any names here. And then the TPA said, okay. And the repricer was like, wait a minute, no, time out. Like this, like the client has to be involved. And the broker's like, I got it. We're fixing this. Well, nothing ever got fixed. It just kept lingering and getting worse. And effectively what this particular hospital did was they said, okay, fine. We've now identified this as a problem plan. And what we're going to do is we're just going to go back over 4 or 5 years and we're going to bill everything between what we got paid and retail. And they came in with this bill. So it was an action against the plan itself. Anyway, by March, we had this thing settled. That client's ecstatic. And the plan this year is running at half the cost it ran at last year.
Wow.
It's amazing. So it's kind of a horror story and a win. But
Right.
I wanted to start with that one because it was the weirdest one I've been on.
I think something too, I mean, everybody has interesting stories if you've done this long enough and you kind of think you've heard it all. The first RBP case that we did came from a longtime client that's still doing it to this very day. And they had absorbed fully insured increases over time significantly. But the one that really got them was they had a situation where there was an employee who married a friend that was in the hospital getting ready for a transplant because they wanted to give them insurance. And nothing you can do about that. It was a legitimate marriage. You know, you have an employer calling you saying
They fell in love, Mike.
They did.
They fell in love.
Right there.
It
And
was really beautiful. It was
Yeah.
so beautiful.
and the employer saying do something. I was like, I don't know what you want me to do because on this particular one,
I can't annul it.
yeah, there's exactly. I wish I could. So gets a massive increase from the fully insured carrier. And I was like, you know, look, there's about only one
Time to go RBP.
Yeah, there's only one thing that you can do. And this was the very first case 18 years ago. And they're in the healthcare industry, the client is. So I thought, you know, I'm allotting a couple hours for a conference call to go over the concept. You know, I'm going through it. 8 minutes in, the guy that owns the company looks at me, or doesn't look at me, but he says, presume.
Yeah, presume.
He says, I got it. I was like, what do you mean you got it? He said, well, most of my reimbursement structure is based on Medicaid pricing. So you're telling me you're going to do Medicare plus 50? He goes, that's more
seems fair.
He goes, that's
Yeah.
more than fair. He goes, let's do it.
Yeah.
And so he did
Yeah.
it. And so was able
That's
to
such a-
basically negate that. And then also moving forward, you know, keep his costs pretty much flat.
I'm gonna let you keep going, but I have to interject this. I've had 6 different hospital CFO clients over the years, and I've talked to every one of them, and I've asked them this question privately: can you make money on Medicare? And 5 of the 6 said, yeah, we just might have to tighten our belts. We might have to run a little bit more
They just don't-
efficiently.
yeah, we don't wanna
but we
admit
don't
that.
publicly say that. We don't publicly say that.
They all can.
Yeah.
Well, they'd be out of business
So
if they
when you
couldn't.
when you say I'm going to give you Medicare plus 40 or 50 or 60%,
Right.
They're like, oh, we want that 300% that the blue antelope pays,
The green shield.
the green shield.
Yeah.
But the reality is, like you just said, 150 is perfectly fine.
Well, I think the way we equate that to a lot of employers, and we have employers all over the spectrum, you know, blue collar, white collar, gray collar, no collar, you know. And when you're talking to these folks and say, you know, I don't know what your profit margin is and the products you sell or the services you provide, but boy, if you could get 50% on everything you do, is that a good living? How many of these
Right.
guys are living out there, you know, in
Right.
the single digits of profit margins?
Margins.
Yeah. And so when you say, how can a hospital not survive on 50% margin of the services they provide? I mean, that's a really easy way to make it very relatable. But, you know, I'll think of another one that is, you know, and this isn't really a horror story, but this is far more of a success story. But we have a large regional employer that's known throughout the state, lots of different locations. And we're about to do their 12th renewal this year right now. And their costs are lower now than they were 12 years ago,
Yeah, that one is amazing.
with higher benefits because we've been able to enrich the benefits.
Hey, so what does
That's-
that mean real trend is in medicine, people?
Think about that.
Yeah.
Because they have claims like everybody else does.
And you're applying the same RBP formula you did 12 years ago.
Same, exactly the same.
And their costs have remained flat. Think about that next time you get your 9, 8, 12, 13% renewal.
Or when the broker comes in and say, hey, we worked really hard.
Yeah, we got it down to
7.
7. Oh, 7. Wow. Yeah. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah, so I got in this business in '08, and so I've seen a lot of different things over those years. But I think the reason that a lot of employers have simply kicked the can down the road on their 7, 8, 9% renewal is because, you know, think about what was going on in '08. You know,
Absolutely.
real estate had crashed, the financial markets were in the tank.
Great
But
recession.
since '08, the U.S. economy has been pretty strong, and so you see these employers who maybe get a 20% renewal, and then their golfing buddy broker is like, "Don't worry, we'll get that down from 20 to 6." Well, okay, they keep eating 6, 8, 10% every year, and now we're at a point where maybe the economy's not quite humming the way the news outlets say it is, and it's kind of like, all right, a lot of people are really starting to take a harder look because, you know, 5 years ago we were looking at nothing but razor-thin margin businesses that had to do something. Now we're looking at law firms, tech companies. I mean, we've got private equity firms on our books, not because they can't pay for a PPO, because they're just
They're
sick and
concerned
tired of the
with the
system.
cost.
I mean,
Yeah, right.
you got organizations that have averaged well into the 6-figure salaries, and they're doing this.
Stop it. Here's something I think people fail to think about as well. We talked about M&A a little bit ago and how much, private equity money there is in different industries, all kinds of industries, so our clients are being purchased. There's people pursuing them. So when you look at being able to reduce, your number 2, number 3 expense by 30 or 40%, look what that does to a multiple when someone's looking to purchase you.
Right.
A lot of guys are thinking of it in that aspect.
Yeah.
I mean, so we had one where we saved them $1 million the first year. And they're looking at that $1 million and say, right now, my competitors are getting purchased at 10 times.
Yeah.
So what's that $1 million savings worth to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a couple local clients here, and we're close with both CEOs, and they've told us the type of money that we're saving them, and what they're actually doing with some of that money is they're using it to acquire other businesses.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Or in some cases, I've had clients in the past save so much money already in the first quarter that they use some of it to hire someone to manage the plan internally.
Sure.
Yeah, that's,
Oh, yes.
that's a sales pitch.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a legitimate one. I
Yeah.
always,
Sure.
because I work on large enough groups that if we don't save them, usually I'm going to save $1 million the first year,
Right.
just because of the size of groups we work on. So look, if I'm going to save you $1 million, and I'm going to put in a health plan that's a little bit more difficult, more moving pieces, got to do more education, got to have more hand-holding, let's buy a new HR person for 70 to 120 Gs. Like, let's take 1/10 of your savings and like have one person do nothing but babysit this plan and make it as smooth and concierge-y, did I
As
make that
possible.
up? As possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Concierge-y?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's an easy. Now, it's not required because I've had clients that go, hey, I appreciate the advice, Craig, but we're not going to do it. And they do fine too.
Right.
But
Sure.
like if you are an engineering firm, a law firm, if you are a higher level white collar firm and you're like, man, I want some of those savings, this is how you do it.
Yeah, it's just more touch.
Yeah.
That's what it is. You're just creating a situation
Helping
where
them
there's more touch.
pave the way with
Right.
ClaimTalk, so to speak.
What are some other ways that in the past you have found it effective to ease the mind of clients as you're getting ready to introduce an RBP plan? Like, what are some of those safeguards or feel good things that you like to tell
I don't
them?
think you can ever ease the mind. I think what you need to do is just be completely honest and transparent with them, which I think a lot of the brokerage market that dabbles in this is not.
Correct.
You know,
Because they don't even know.
Correct.
A lot of it, they don't even know.
exactly. So, I mean, there's things that can happen, will happen, could go wrong, will go wrong. But I mean, once again, it goes back to what we talked a little bit more about, being transparent and being consistent. And so having that conversation right up front and saying, these things will happen. I think people appreciate the truthfulness and the clarity more than having it sugar-coated and saying, oh, well, these things are going to happen, but we're going to, be there to fix it. You got to be able to tell them what the worst case could be, but how are we going to deal with it?
And two real easy answers too. Dual option.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
because we can do this. You don't have to just this ain't your grandpappy's RBP anymore, folks. You don't
This
have
is 2024, people.
Yeah,
Come on.
Come on
Yeah.
now. We're post-pandemic. You don't have to just go RBP. We can run reference-based pricing alongside of UHC, alongside of Cigna, and now you can even rent Anthem's physician-only network as long as you have 500 or more employees on the plan. You can use Anthem's physician-only network as long as you're in one of the 14 or 15 Anthem states, and you can then just reference-based price the facility charges, which really makes RBP cookie cutter easy because you're not going to have any blowback when you go to the doctor because they're going to see that Anthem logo on the card.
And by the way, when you go dual option and you put 25 to 30% differential between the two options, carrier or ClaimDoc, people will still price buy. People will
Yeah.
still buy the
they
cheaper option.
Yeah.
You're still going to have a ton of steerage.
Getting all the members anyway when we do the 80% of them. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
That's where it becomes more of a reinsurance negotiation at that point,
Yeah.
because the underwriters always assume that they're going to get adverse selected against, meaning the sickest people are going to pick the richest plan. So they're going to pay more for it, and we
Yep.
know that they will. So that, you have to have very good reinsurance relationships at that point, or be able to negotiate
Tell that
point.
story.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
We have those relationships, and now we have the data because we've gone hard in the paint on the dual option strategy in the markets where the networks will allow us to do
Sure.
it. To us, it's the wave of the future, so to speak, because now HR is not forcing everybody into an RBP plan. The noisy ones are staying on the PPO network.
Sure they are.
The CFO who doesn't care about saving a couple $100 a month can stay on a traditional network. The nervous Nellies who want to make sure that their 3, 4, 10 doctors are all in network. Fine, you can pay more and stay on the PPO.
Right.
And now it gives the benefit managers a little bit more teeth when there is problems because they can come back to the employee and say, look, I know you're having this problem. We'll solve the problem, but don't forget, you're also saving X amount of dollars a month back in your paycheck. You chose this program. If you want to pay $300 more, you can go back to this traditional network, but this is why you're doing this. And so for us, it's awesome because we're getting the bulk of the membership anyway, but it's kind of that baby step into the world of RVP.
Training wheels.
Yeah.
The other thing I would
It's
just
awesome.
add to that, I think that is the most important thing, is the dual option or the Anthem where you can do the physician only. But the other piece of that is, I joke about it not being your grandpappy's RBP, but it's not the same RBP as it was 8-10 years ago.
Amen. Say it louder for the people in the back, dude. That's for real.
I mean, it's totally
It's
different.
so different now.
We should know, if we're watching this podcast, that ClaimTalk becomes a fiduciary on the plan for the life of the claim with attorneys here in-house that know what they're doing. So what that means is, you're not going to have a situation like I had to come in and clean up back in December where you've got all these claims and you've got no legal defense.
Right.
So that's one thing, is you've got the ClaimDoc solution, which is powerful legal for the life of the claim, even if you fire ClaimDoc. And you have a couple other repricers out there that are following along and doing their best to try and keep up with you. One of them is now, dabbling with doing what you're doing by hiring a law firm to become the fiduciary. Another one has offered a balance bill product where they're willing to take on the responsibility of balance bills and pay it for an additional fee. So it's really, what you guys have done is awesome because you're pushing it. And I get it now. Like when I first talked to you, you talked about network replacement, and you didn't like to say reference-based pricing. And I get it now because you're paving the way. You're becoming a fiduciary. You're taking it's a totally different beast.
Yeah.
And RBP is nothing like it was 10 years ago when it was just like, here's what we're going to pay, and if you don't like it, talk to our lawyers.
So one of our sales guys, Soha, coined the term. I really like this term. I've been using it a lot lately. It's like the MP3 player. We weren't the first MP3 player, but we are the iPod. Right? Like, it's the best one.
You're the Zune or the Zen or whatever the heck those things were.
The knockoff, yeah.
Ben always says Bill Belichick didn't create the 3-4 defense, but he sure did run it the best.
Right,
And that's
right.
kind of us. We've kind of
Our attitude,
anointed ourselves the gold standard, and it shows in the market when people are copying what we do and then also slandering us for no reason.
Yeah, you guys are as hated in the RBP space as I am in the broker space, which really says something. I really appreciate that about
That's a
you.
high compliment.
It
Thank
is
you so much.
because I've seen behind the curtain, and it's because you guys just kick tail and take names. I mean, it's truly awesome what you do, the whole package. It really is. And I'm not just saying that because they gave me $100,000 to be here.
They said Craig's going to pick up his check on the way out.
He got $200,000 though.
I hope they
longer.
signed their NDAs. Come on, man. We're going to have to cut that out.
You got a steak dinner and you'll like it.
So one more thing I want to talk about is misperception, because we're addressing the broker market here, and I think there's a lot of conversation out in the market that is selling against RBP for many of the reasons that we've already brilliantly illuminated here. But what are some common misperceptions that you believe the market, broker or otherwise, holds about RBP, particularly maybe with modern RBP?
I don't think it's whether it be modern or whether it be old school or whatever
Grandpappies,
you want,
yeah.
grandpappies, whatever you want to call it. The thing is that you will see a large contingency of brokers that will just go flat out tell them these hospitals won't accept this.
Yeah.
And so they just say, now, granted, the concept of acceptance and getting access to care is different than, will they or will they not balance bill. Sure. So, but that is the most common thing that cuts right to the heart of anything, is the fear factor of it not being accepted, or, they're going to be turned away. I mean, that's the number one thing that you deal with, especially in the competitive standpoint, And so once you can get past that, and you can show people with, a level of experience where this is accepted, what can be done. Is there possible, anybody can balance bill. I think something we're not even talking about here is, if you're on a Blue Cross Blue Shield plan, United Healthcare, I mean, I see just as many balance bills from
If
those
not more,
providers,
yep.
Than anywhere else. And I think people forget about that.
Little different in California because so many people are on HMOs, but on my PPOs,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that's not even discussed. And you know what it is? Unfortunately, this is complex stuff. People get their EOB, nobody opens their mail hardly, or they can't read it and they just pay it. And that goes on time and time and time again. And so I think that's the number one thing you contend with when you have a brokerage market that is either understanding of RBP and they're looking for ways, to thwart it, or they're not. And so then they just default to the quickest thing is, they won't take your people.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the West, I would say, again, California mainly, but Oregon, Washington, Nevada, it's Arizona too. The misconception is that balance bills are a big issue. That's the misconception, because they're just not. Like, especially in California, because legislatively we've done so much to protect the patient and the consumer in California, that balance bills are not the first line of defense for a provider that wants money. They usually will come after the plan directly.
They'll appeal, which is preferred.
Which is easier. You ask any of the fine attorneys here, they'll tell you, great, bring it, because we're going to win every time if you do that. We're going to win every time if you balance bill too. So I would say the misconception is that balance billing is an issue, because it's just not. At least in the West, I just don't see that as a big issue at all. The issue for us is access on planned care at certain facilities some of the time. It's not even all of the time.
Yeah.
They're not consistent. This facility will say, we don't take that, and then a week later they'll take it.
Well, what the big health systems, what they do, what they say and what they do are two very different things.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's what's really eye-opening.
Yeah, I mean, they'll send letters out to the brokerage community saying we don't take it. They'll tell you to your face that they won't take it, but then they do. And so we, luckily we have a great provider relations team in-house. Our head of provider relations is a former hospital executive.
That's another misconception, is that nobody understands that ClaimTalk has a provider relations team. The slander against you guys out in the industry amongst your competitors is, oh, those guys are aggressive. They're only paying 20% over cost, and they just have attorneys in-house to sue. And it's kind of comical, because they don't know how to compete against you. So they just slander on this stuff that's not even accurate.
Isn't that what everybody defaults to?
Yeah.
Think about it. When you don't have a legitimate argument, then you default to the scariest possible thing.
Yeah,
Fear.
They have a provider relations team.
Fear.
They want to get along with these hospitals to provide us care.
If I'm Joe Broker and I'm competing against Craig, I'm like, oh yeah, Craig, that guy's an idiot. He talks too much. He's loud. He's obnoxious. Why would you ever want to do business with him? It's easy to do.
Yeah.
It's easy.
To slander. Yeah.
A little salt in the wound.
So I'd like to wrap up today and have each person at this table give one piece of advice to a broker that has never sold RBP and is a little hesitant, right? So this person has never sold RBP. They're a little scared because they don't really understand it maybe, and they're worried they'll get fired if it goes poorly, right? Piece of advice.
Well, I think the first piece of advice is always first think about your client, and think about the client and think about those employees. And something that we haven't touched upon here at all is that this industry, like many industries, but this one typically is very relationship driven. How many times are we, quoting on business, or we're competing for business where an employer is working with somebody that's a college buddy, or it's someone, a golf friend, or some sort of social relationship, so it's very tight knit in that regard. But I mean, for a broker that's considering this, that's keeping the best interests of their client in mind, which they should be always, look at it, think about it, understand it, and be transparent. One thing we'll always find is that clients are not upset when you're upfront with them and tell them that, and be very, very direct about what can and will happen, and that's the thing. It goes back to transparency always, and, become a good educator about it. We've talked about fears, we've talked about actuality, all those different things. Be able to explain both of them comfortably. And I think with that, people appreciate it, and it's not a hard argument to make, especially when you equate it back to their business. And, that's what we've always found. What we're talking about here is not rocket science, really. I mean, what we're talking about is the cost of providing a service or a product, and then what's paid for it, and how is that accomplished.
Yeah. Advice for a broker?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know you're not short on that.
In all honesty, brokers, what I would say to you is, it's probably not for you. If you have a prospect that this looks good for, you're probably going to end up getting sued. You're not a lawyer. You don't know how to do this. Go ahead and just send them to my way, and I'll send you 5% of the commission.
Oh my God.
Call it a finder's fee. Yeah.
No, okay. That's my fun answer for brokers. I would say two things. One, check your soul. If you're new in the industry, I get it. You're just trying to learn. You're trying to do this. But if you've been in this industry more than a dozen years, and you think that you're doing the best thing for your client by shopping the same 4 or 5 players over and over, and they're overcharging by at least a factor of 2, check your soul. Because if you don't care about that, and if you just want to buy a nicer car, you're going to keep doing it. And there's nothing I can say to you that's going to fix that. But if you care, you will go this route. You will at least show your clients how to do this, because it's the most powerful tool. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of levers we have in healthcare. This is the most powerful tool you have. There's other tools we can package around it. But if you're not playing with this tool, you're going to lose eventually. That's what I would say.
Great advice.
Yeah.
What about you?
Oh, you want me to do it too,
Yeah.
even though I'm not a broker?
Yeah. What is
You're
your
thinking about it.
advice
You're thinking about it,
to the
you said.
first-time broker?
Gosh,
Yeah.
do it with us because we're the best. No, I mean, really, I
A
would.
bad influence on him.
I like it.
No, I would say, yeah. I mean, do it with me because I'll walk you through the process. I don't need to lie, cheat, or steal to win a piece of business, and we'll make it go well. We'll make it sticky.
Yeah, heard. I would say if it's your first time selling reference-based pricing, do not do it by yourself. Get your reference-based pricing educator, advocate, vendor involved in that conversation. Do not make things up. Do not create answers to questions that you do not know. Get the person who knows involved in the sale and humble yourself and bring someone else in that room to help you get the deal done.
That's well said. Yeah.
Yeah, that's that's what was done to me. So I would hope that other people also have a positive experience. Hey, Omar and I are sincerely so grateful
Yeah,
for your
thanks,
being
guys.
here today,
Our pleasure.
for your expertise. It's been wonderful.
I picked you guys based on looks, just so you know.
Well, it's always good to hear.
Yeah,
Make them look better. Clearly.
yeah.
I get it.
Awesome.
Great. Well, thanks for being with us today. Make sure you like, subscribe, or follow us on whatever medium that you're using to subscribe to this podcast. Hope you learned something new, and we'll see you next time.